All right. Today we're going to talk about when is too early to start planning for your retirement. And I know the first answer that comes to your mind is it's never too early to start planning for retirement, which is totally true. But let's talk about levels of planning for retirement. So let me just give you my history and kind of how I worked, and then I'll give you why I'm writing this, why I'm doing this video. It's kind of a warning for people in some regards. So my first step into this whole retirement thing is I started watching some YouTube videos. This guy Josh Scanlon. Um, what drove me to really start looking at it realistically was just frustration. My job was just driving me crazy. I worked, like I said, I was a software developer in the financial industry. I commuted into New York City every day until COVID, and it was just miserable. Like I'd be up at 6, not getting home till 7. It was just yucky. But I was at an age where I didn't want to start over again, and I'd worked really hard to get my offshore teams going and stuff like that. So I just didn't want to just go find a new job because I had a feeling I was close. So that was kind of the entrance of when I kind of started. Now I always had it in my mind, but let's just start. So my first foray into this whole thing was I did this massive spreadsheet, and I'll show this to you. And you can see the date created here is 2021. So it's like for maybe 5 years. Oh no, 2019, because scenario is the one that I created. So I started working on this spreadsheet in 2019, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And I started building in things that made what I wanted to think about, and so this is what I built. Now I'm not going to go over this too much because I'm really not a believer, and I love spreadsheets. You know that already, but it's too easy to make a mistake. But I just wanted to show you this was such a great platform for me because it made me think of things like colas, my wife's pension, how to simulate, when we die, like what age we die, inflation rates, in income inflation, which income inflation is just raises, uh, tax rates. I have whole tax tables. I had federal tax tables in here that I looked at. Um, I did a column where I could reduce my spending because I knew there would be like go-go years and stuff. So you see this yellow column. So what it would do is it would reduce the spending by, it would reduce it to 90% and then go down, reduce it 90%, whatever. And then it would look at what I was making, and I put in like how much I had, what the interest rate was, how much I'm not contributing anymore, but I was contributing per month. So I did a lot of work on this. Great time, enjoyed it. How much to save, what should my savings rate be versus investing, just all sorts of crazy stuff. What to do with overage, seed money, number of years that I'm going to be retired, and did all this good stuff. Social Security, blah, 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 blah. But I started that in 2019. Now, if you back up, actually, I started all this probably more when I was from 22 to 30. I worked a job where I had a pension. And so it all kind of started around 35, maybe, when I really started thinking about it heavily. And that's kind of what the point of this video is. Like, they call them the tween years, and because it's between, not your kids, it's also kids, tween years, I guess, between your younger years and your teenage years, I don't know, or tween years when you're a teenager and between your 20s, I don't know. But what I found is when I started going through this spreadsheet and I started seeing when I could actually retire, I got really fixated on that number. It was almost like a hope, like, oh yeah, this is great. And I was probably more willing to sacrifice a lot more because I saw a date on the horizon. Now I don't know if that would have been as good if I had done this same planning at 20, let's just say 30 or something like that. I think what it would have done to me is it may have gotten me to the point where I was working so hard to get that date earlier that it may have prevented me from enjoying the life that was in front of me. Now, we had some really hard times, but not really hard compared to others, but we had some tough financial times. Um, so so I honestly think my this is my personal opinion for me. I think like starting my planning around 50 um, was pretty good because that was like 6 years ago. Let's see, 1965, 2025, I'm 58. So I actually started planning like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. So I was like 52. I think that was a good time to start planning because it served a lot of good functions for me. One is it served the purpose that I felt like, okay, I can make it. I can make it 5 years and I can do this. And I started putting the numbers together. It was looking good. It did help me pay off my mortgage a lot faster because I just saw I could start investing that. Now, did I really just start planning at 52? Absolutely not. I mean, if anyone's watching a video, it was like, I mean, I still wish I'd have done it earlier in this, but probably sometime around 35 is when I really started hammering. So when I was working at Jeffries, they at one point were matching our 401k 50%. That's really what motivated me to just go for it and just put as much as I possibly could in. Um, so so what happened is because I didn't have that date or whatever, I still paid myself first. So like I told my son this morning, or no, was it yesterday? I said, you know what? Keep what you have that you need for spending. Now, granted, he doesn't have a lot of bills. He's here, and just save the rest. And make sure your 401k Roth is maxed, or at least maxed to the point of matching. Um, because but I guess kind of what I'm just describing is the fire movement, and if you start too early, and I don't think that's always healthy because it's almost like when times were tough, I just knew I had to save as much as possible. Um, but I don't know. I think I may have been a little discouraged. I think if I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to retire till 57, 58. And maybe that's why people like financial advisors because they can kind of offload all this stuff on them and then call them and say, hey, how am I looking? And the financial advisor goes, you're looking good, you know, but it's not like on their mind all the time. Whereas when you start planning at this kind of level, it's going to be on your mind all the time. I spent oodles of time. Like I must have spent a good, I don't know, 60, 70, well, probably more than that, probably 80 hours putting the spreadsheet together and evolving it. It started out really simple. Just started out with my expenses and some simple, really plan. I've since deleted it. Um, but but I think what I'm trying to tell people is I think you should plan, but I think what you should do in your earlier years, and this is just me, and it worked out pretty well for me, is just do the best you can. you know, Make sure you're saving at your highest point. Make sure when you're not making tons of money, you're putting it in Roth. And when you're making a lot more money, then maybe your, non-Roth works good because you get a good tax break. Um, but maybe don't get hung up too early because I think what if you get a date, one, you could be discouraged. Two, I think you could sacrifice too much of your current life for for the retirement. And we had a good life. It was tight sometimes, um, but I think I don't know. Maybe I would have sacrificed more. Maybe I would have been more depressed if I thought how long it was going to take. I did read something that was interesting at one point where they did a study and they're having a hard time getting young people to save. I mean, my kids are doing pretty good because I hammer into them to do it. Um, but they took this software and they showed them a picture of them. It was basically aging software. So you gave them a picture and it would age you like to what you would look like when you're 60. And they showed it to them and somehow that correlation enabled them to save better. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if you went to all this effort and you saw 57, it would help you save better. I guess the things that I would worry about is you would get so obsessed that you would just give up your life now. And like I maybe it would have messed with me if I had seen if my wife stayed home for like 10 years, but then it took her 3 4 years to find a full-time job. Maybe had I seen that number, I would have been like, no, I don't think you should stay home with the kids. I think you should go to work. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I know they call it the tween years, which are very tough. When you have it's great to get like a month that you're going to retire, but it also is tough because all of a sudden, if you don't like your job, all of a sudden you're just so focused on that. You get laser focused on that date and time, which could come at the expense of your current life a little bit. So, like I said, for me, I was pretty happy. I thought 52 was a good time to. I'd always like saved as best I could, but hadn't really started planning till 52. So I'm curious what your thoughts are in the comments. Have a great day. And thanks again so much for listening and subscribing. I appreciate you guys so much, and hopefully this material is helpful.